Okay, well, I suppose because of my last video, I should probably put up this video for you. Um, this video is primarily informed by a biochemist from, I believe, France named Jessie Inchauspe. I hope I got that name right. Um, and she's a very smart lady, and she has confirmed what I think our ancestors knew. And that is that if you eat food in a certain order, you can reduce the negative impact that eating it can have on you. So, have you ever gone to a buffet, or maybe you've gone to your family's holiday party or a friend's party, and you've eaten lots of cake and drank lots of soda, maybe cookies and candy and other kind of sweet things, to the point of you're like, I've had enough sugar for a year. And then you find yourself falling asleep or feeling you're yawning a lot. Have you ever had that happen? People like to talk about that in relationship with Thanksgiving. And they like to blame turkey and serotonin and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily or even primarily about Thanksgiving or about serotonin. It's about something that you're doing to your body that is very destructive, and that's overloading it with sugar. And so between my own experimentation and what I learned more recently from Jessie Inchauspe, there are definite techniques you can use in order to flatten the curve, to borrow a word from the pandemic. And by that I mean you can, instead of having this big sugar spike and then a crash causing you to want to sleep, you can have your sugar go up slowly and down slowly, and it won't spike and crash. Because either your body's going to underreact, which is going to make you sick, or because you're going to have hyperglycemia, or it's going to overreact, and that's going to make you sick because you're going to have hypoglycemia. Not to mention the other impacts of sugars on your body, how it affects your muscles, how it affects your liver, and so on. And not to mention your brain. So one of the things that I figured out on my own is that if you consume fiber prior to eating something that has lots of sugar in it, that'll help flatten the curve. Now, my preferred method for doing that is pure fiber. But the problem is most stores don't sell much in the way of pure fiber. They sell fiber that not even for control of your blood sugar level, but more for like constipation and regular bowel movements and stuff like that. So a lot of the makers of fiber add sugar and flavoring to it. Or if it's supposed to be safe for diabetics, they may use dextrin, which is a starch, so it's still sugar. Or they may use maltodextrin, which is much worse in terms of blood sugar than sugar is, because sugar's around 65 on the glycemic index, whereas maltodextrin is 100 to 150. So it's more than double in some cases, depending on how much is in there, how much is going to spike. Okay, so you want to avoid that. I mean, it's not good. And there are other products that they'll put in that are also not safe for diabetics, not safe for people in general, or people with specific diseases. Like some will use what's called aspartame, and aspartame can cause problems for people who have a personal or family history of phenylketonuria. And that has nothing to do with the keto diet or ketogenesis or ketones. I can't really tell you what it does do. I can just tell you, if you have a personal or family history, don't eat or drink anything that has aspartame in it. If you don't have a personal or family history of it, you're probably going to be safe. I've had many drinks with aspartame, and I've never had any problems with them. But yeah, you need to look very carefully at the ingredients because they'll often advertise on the label that it's low sugar or it's sugar free, and they won't have a sugar in it, but they will have maltodextrin in it or some other kind of thing that's still going to cause a problem for you. So if you're going to buy it, you should be looking for something that either has something like stevia, monk fruit, sucralose, or erythritol, maybe mannitol. If you're not diabetic, you can also go with xylitol, sorbitol, and maltitol and lactitol, but those will give you something of a blood sugar spike, so you don't want to overconsume those. Also, some people, like myself, are sensitive to erythritol. For me, it causes me to have lots of diarrhea and gas. I mean, just noxious. I mean, I probably... It's a good thing I'm not working in an office, or I would be the only person left alive in that office. I'm surprised my child, he's probably become immune to my gas. But yeah, and other people will have problems with sucralose. Some people will have problems with both. So you may not be able to use either of those. The problem is the only way to find out is to use it and see what happens. And what I would suggest is to introduce it in, start out with a small amount and gradually increase the amount that you're using. That way your body can get used to it and you can minimize the risk of having diarrhea and gas and bloating, of course, because it really does suck. So, but the best choice is just buy plain pure fiber. And the only fiber that I'm aware of that definitely is suitable for me, at least, is psyllium fiber or psyllium husks. Now, whether it's whole husks or it's been chopped up, that does make a difference in how quickly your body can use it in terms of getting rid of it. So whole husks are going to stay in your body longer and thus be more beneficial than if you buy the stuff that's like been chopped up really finely. Now, when you use psyllium fiber or psyllium husks, and the only one that I know of in my area that is sugar-free and everything-free is this console with the red. Okay, there's another one that has a different color, and that one actually has stuff in it that you shouldn't be consuming if you're diabetic or whatever. But if you get the one with the red, simply one ingredient, 100% all natural. So this is the only one I know. There are other brands available, obviously, but that's the only one in my area, unfortunately. So my recommendation is buy pure psyllium husks, not powdered, but just in their natural form, and use that. You can also use it in baking, but you do have to be careful not to overuse it, or you're going to end up with something that's very rubbery. Because here, and how you use it, if you're just going to consume it, it doesn't have a great taste, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. The taste is, for some people, a little bit off-putting. And other people are very intolerant about it, and they don't like it, and they don't want to use it because they can't say, okay, this is something I need for my health, so I'm going to learn to like it, or at least accept it. I don't anticipate drinking my psyllium husk every day, but I need it. So you put it into your beverage, and it's going to thicken up your beverage. So make sure that whatever you're creating doesn't already have a thickening agent in it. That could be agar, it could be pectin, it could be gelatin, it could be avocado, any of a number of other things that are going to make the beverage thicker. It could make it so thick that you're basically eating a Jell-O. If that's what you want, that's fine. But I'm just warning you. I just put it with water. I don't mix it with other things that have sugar in it because that's defeating the purpose of flattening the sugar curve in my blood vessels. So I take a teaspoon of it, I put it into a cup of water, literally a cup of water. You can do less if you want it to be thicker. You can do more if you want it to be thinner. And you can either drink it right away, at which it isn't fully, what's the word? Hydrated, yeah. If it's not fully hydrated, so it won't at that point be very, very soft and very gelatinous. It will be it'll be a thin drink, and you'll just notice that there's something in there that you can physically feel. If you do decide to let it hydrate in the water so that it thickens up and becomes this thicker mass, and because you want that for whatever reason, and that's the way I usually drink it, make sure you stir it up initially to get it all evenly, because otherwise you might get a pocket where there's still some dry stuff in the very center, or it's very firm in the center because it hasn't fully hydrated in the center, but on the outside it has, which for some people can be gross. And also, once you've done stirring it up, later, before you drink it, stir it again, because if you've let it sit for several minutes, it rises to the top. The hydrated fiber rises to the top. And then you've got a bunch of water at the bottom with very little fiber in it, and you've got this mass at the top, and it's like all stuck together. So stirring it up will break it up so that it's distributed and easier for you to drink. Now, so that's what I do, and it works great. And I find it much more convenient than other alternatives. So now I'm going to share with you most of what I've learned from Jessie Inchauspe. Sorry, Jessie. I think, first of all, you can drink a small amount of vinegar in your beverage. Now, 1 or maybe 2 tablespoons of vinegar, any kind of vinegar, it does not matter. Not 100% pure vinegar, though, because then you're going to have to dilute it a lot. But put your vinegar into a glass of water or a beverage that you're going to drink so it doesn't taste quite so obnoxious. I don't like vinegar. And what happens is it tends to help your body to process the sugar. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think Jessie said that somehow it helps your body to put the sugar into your muscles. So however it works, it helps some people. I didn't really notice a significant difference, or certainly not the kind of difference that that this stuff gives me, which is a big difference. This is really a game changer for me. And again, you can overlap or even use all of the things I'm going to suggest, or you can try them one by one and see individually how each of them helps you. So that's the second suggestion, is vinegar. The third suggestion is more the order of food consumption. If you're not interested in drinking a fiber drink, and you're not interested in thickening your beverage, and you're not interested in having some vinegar to help the absorption and pushing of the sugar into your muscles, then what you can do is you can eat your meal in courses. Now, you're probably going to ask me right away, do you have to eat it in a certain order? Kind of. The important thing is everything with starches and sugars should be at the end, because that way you're maximizing the opportunity of the other foods to prepare your body and kind of force your body to not be able to process those sugars quickly. Because if you eat, for example, sugar on an empty stomach, like a candy, that's going to go into your bloodstream almost immediately. If you eat starches, generally speaking, simple or the less complicated stuff especially, it's going to be in your bloodstream within half an hour. The most complex stuff, it's going to take a lot longer because it's got fiber. But we're not talking about that. We are talking, however, about processed fiber containing things that have starch in them, like grains. Most grains, they've taken out the gluten, and they've taken out the other sources that are good for your health, except for if you're like gluten intolerant. or if you have a serious problem with fiber. And remember, fiber is a laxative. The more you consume, the looser your poop's going to be. It can even be diarrhea. So if you're going to try to get to an appropriate level of fiber, just like with what I'm talking about, you have to ramp it up slowly so your body doesn't get overwhelmed and you end up with diarrhea and gas and bloating. So, step number 1, the first part of your meal should be composed of vegetables that are not starchy. So I'm sorry, no tubers. That includes carrots, and it includes potatoes, sweet potatoes, anything that is a starchy vegetable, turnips, radishes, all that stuff. That's all starchy. Okay? And so primarily you're going to be looking at like green leafy vegetables, but also anything else that doesn't have a lot of starch in it. That's a vegetable. So cucumber is fine. Celery is great. It's got lots of fiber in it. And there's a bunch of other options out there that are not leaf vegetables, but are fine for you to eat at the start of your meal. So a salad is a great choice, or a vegetable soup with no starchy vegetables in it is a great choice too. It's not that you can't absolutely eat those starchy vegetables at the beginning, but if it is something with a form of starch that's easy to digest, you are running the risk of kind of defeating what you're trying to achieve. And certainly, if you're going to have a salad, you want to be very careful about the salad dressing you choose, because a lot of salad dressings are very high in sugar, surprisingly so. And remember, when you look at the measurement of what they call a serving, which is an absolute joke to me, they measure it by either 1 or 2 tablespoons most of the time. So you're not going to get that much sugar because you're unlikely to just use 1 to 2 tablespoons, unless you have a very small salad. Now, personally, what I like to do is I like to get a nice variety of vegetables. I put it in a burrito shell, a wrap, and I eat it like that. And I find it to be very, very enjoyable. But I've gotten used to that. At first, it was a little bit difficult, but then once I figured out, if I combine these different vegetables together, it's really quite nice. And I find that organic vegetables are generally going to be more enjoyable than non-organic ones, although there are exceptions. I think that there are some farms where they try to be organic, or they try to minimize the use of things that are going to damage what they're growing in terms of nutritional value and stuff like that. If you can't afford organic and non-GMO, it's okay. The important thing is you're getting these vegetables. So once you've had the vegetables, then you can move on to proteins and fats. Now, proteins come from, originally, plants. Plants produce proteins. Animals eat the plants and bioaccumulate the protein for their muscles and other functions. So when you're eating an animal, you're getting all that accumulated protein. So does that mean you shouldn't eat plants to get protein? Oh, absolutely not. You can eat plants. Beans are a good source of protein, for example. And please don't listen to Dr. Gundry when he says that everybody should stop eating beans and everything from the nightshade family. That only applies to people who have a specific problem with those foods. It does not apply to everybody. Okay? So eat protein sources. It could be tofu and tempeh. Tofu is also called bean curd. It could be seafood, but be careful with like shellfish, be that like shrimp, or it's like things in a shell like a clam or oyster or mussels or scallops. And those things tend to be high in certain things that can be bad for you. So, eat those in moderation. And if you're going to eat fish, stay away from predatory fish. No swordfish, no marlin, no tilefish, no sharks, no tuna, none of the fish that are predatory, because just like on land, Animals bioaccumulate things, and unfortunately, lots of industries dump toxic chemicals and metals into the waterways and oceans as a convenient way to get rid of the chemicals they don't want to have to deal with. And that gets absorbed directly or indirectly by smaller fish, which are eaten by bigger fish, which are eaten by bigger fish, and so on and so forth. And all of that gets concentrated into these predators, especially the top predators, of which the ones that I just listed are all top high-level predators. And that means that when you are eating, say, a swordfish, which is very yummy tasting, I admit, you are getting a lot of mercury, which is horribly bad for your health, and DDT, which is horribly bad for your health, and PCBs and all kinds of other crap that you do not want to have in your body, and it's accumulated in predatory fish. So you're better off with like herring and salmon and the other oily fish that are not predatory, mackerel not so much, and stay away from, as much as you can, the farm-raised fishes, because most of them are raised in very crowded conditions. They're given lots of antibiotics to minimize the problems with diseases, and they're fed man-made foods which are not as rich and diverse as natural foods that these animals would eat if they were out in the open. So you're going to get something that may taste fine, but it may not. It may have a muddy flavor. One of the ways you can tell if a fish was raised in captivity or not and was not taken care of properly is if it has a muddy flavor if it's not fried. Frying, for some reason, destroys that muddy flavor, but in other forms of cooking, it generally tastes muddy. So if you've ever had catfish and you've ever noticed that catfish flavor is sometimes a bit muddy, that's the kind of flavor I'm talking about. I'm not saying that all catfish are like that. However, I would say avoid catfish because it's one of the types of fish that does bioaccumulate as a bottom feeder, a lot of things that are not good for health. You can also, of course, eat different kinds of meats. Please avoid processed meats. That means sausage. That means bacon. That means anything like ham where the humans have done something to change it. And in America, ham is processed with a chemical that keeps the ham looking pink. That's not the natural color. Just look at a pork chop. When you cook a pork chop, does it look pink? Does it stay the color it was when it was uncooked? No, it changes to an off-white color. Ham, you cook it, it stays pink. Why? Because American producers of ham have decided it's too difficult to teach the public that ham is actually supposed to have a gray color. That's it. So they continue to use this chemical, which has been shown to be bad for health. And often they add other things that are bad for health too, like the salt that makes ham and bacon so dangerous. Or one of the things that makes it so dangerous anyways. You can eat chicken, you can eat lamb, you can eat goat, you can eat cow, you can eat turkey, you can eat duck. However, be careful not to eat too much, especially cow, goat, lamb, and any other ruminants or animals that eat, that graze on grass all the time, because that type of meat in particular has been shown to have more health dangers than other types of meat. Also, unless you are one of those minority of people that cannot eat vegetables and fruits, and I mean literally, medically speaking, the doctor has said, don't. You must eat meat. And that's pretty rare. Unless you're one of those people, you should be limiting your meat intake. Now, it depends on how old you are. It depends on your level of physical activity. But as a general rule of thumb, if you are a child, a teenager, or a young adult, maybe a few times a week, but not a huge portion, just a small portion once a day. If you are a woman up until the point of menopause, you can continue with that level of meat consumption if you want to, or less. It doesn't have to. Again, the protein does not have to be from animals. The fat doesn't have to be from animals either. However, once you hit menopause, you want to start tapering your meat consumption down to about once a week. The same for men. Unless you're like a man or a woman who's a very physically active person because of your job, or because you're like a bodybuilder or a high performance athlete or something like that, you do not need a lot of protein. And in fact, the rule of thumb is, unless you are like an extreme athlete, the really high level athletes, you only need about 0.8 grams per kilo. Now, I'm about 165 pounds, and so for me, that means about 59, 60 grams of protein a day. That's all. You don't need, in fact, and you should not be consuming products that are designed with protein, especially if it's like a protein isolate. It doesn't matter whether it's from dairy or meat or plants. There are health risks associated with protein isolates. And even with soy, there is no health benefit associated with the protein isolates. And I personally, if you didn't see my protein video recently, I was trying a vegan protein isolate drink, and it was causing heart problems for me. It raised my blood pressure, so my hypertension got worse, and it started causing general chest pain in this area. So be careful. And again, you do not need to consume huge amounts of meat unless you medically cannot eat other foods. Now, same rules with fat, although not so strict with fat as far as like that, but basically the same rules. It can be from plants, it can be from animals. However, some saturated fats are better for you and some saturated fats are worse for you. Now, for example, fat from ruminants like cows and stuff are worse for you because of the type of fat it is, and also because ruminant animals naturally contain in their fat some trans fats. Also, a lot of processed foods, heavily processed foods, especially junk food and fast food, and even non-fast foods that are served at restaurants like French fries, things that are cooked in oil. So it could be chicken cordon bleu, anything that's deep fried especially. They're going to reuse the oil again and again and again. And the more it's used, the more trans fats build up in it. Refined oils used at home, same problem. There's trans fats in some of those, especially not so much like olive oil and canola oil, but some of the other oils accumulate a fairly large amount of trans fats. So you want to be careful about that. Some saturated fats, like from the stearine in, I think it's stearine, in chocolate, or stearic acid in chocolate is actually better for you. So you need to do a little bit of research, but you do need fat. I mean, your brain is primarily made of fat. So it is important for you to have fat in your brain. It is also important to have fat in your diet, but no trans fats. And I don't want to say we need to follow what was believed since I was a young man or young boy. No, wait. When was that? The 70s? I think it was the late 70s when the results about what is safe to eat from that committee came out and had been distorted by industry pressure, from avoiding meats to avoiding fat. And then it was of certain types, and then it was further distorted so that people thought, all fat, and the consequence was that because fat was taken out and fat is a good source of flavor, it was substituted with salt and sugar in large quantities, which is very bad for health, far worse for health than those fats they were taking out. So in general, you don't need to seek out low-fat products, although butter is not good for you. And margarine also. It's much better to use an oil. It's much better to use an oil that has both omega-3s and omega-6s. Corn oil, it does not have omega-3s, and certain other oils do not have omega-3s. Those should be avoided or used only minimally. And it's better not to fry, especially deep frying. So if you're going to buy chips, buy baked chips, not fried chips. and other snacks. So we've got the first step is the fiber-containing vegetables. Second step is proteins and fats. Then you eat all your carbs. That can be your carrots and your potatoes and your radishes and your turnips and all the other starchy vegetables, and your fruits and your breads and your desserts. That's all at the end, because that means your body has been filled up with all this fiber and protein and fat, so that when the sugar slams in, it isn't going to go spike. It's going to go like a nice hill, a gentle hill. Not a hill you want to sled down, because it's going to be a slow ride, and maybe you'll get stuck, but so to speak. But yeah, now I personally have found that it's easier for me personally at the beginning of the day, at least, for me to just consume my fiber and then I have an avocado shake. I use my milk substitute because I'm lactose intolerant, and I have an avocado. And I have some sugar substitute in there. Like right now, I've got one that's sucralose based, and I usually put some spices in, like cinnamon or ginger or clove or nutmeg or allspice or a combination of those, so I get a kind of a pumpkin spice flavor. I try different things to see what tastes good, and you can do that too if you want to. I find that works really well for me. Or if you don't want to eat meat, you can also go for the tofu and tempeh, and lots of different options. But be careful about sugar consumption. Be careful about salt consumption. There are lots of problems with excess salt consumption in our society, especially because the American Heart Association announced last year that you should limit your consumption to, I believe it was 1,500 milligrams of salt per day. Salt. Now, if it's MSG, you can eat a lot more, because MSG has a fraction of the sodium that salt has. Also, if you can consume potassium chloride, which is sometimes branded like no salt or something like that, you can consume more of that than salt. However, you do have to be careful not to consume too much, because too much potassium can actually kill you. So you need to talk to an expert about what is a safe amount of that per day. Also, there are some minority of people who do have a sensitivity to MSG. It may make them more sensitive to pain, and in that case, you should limit your MSG intake. You can also buy spice blends that contain no salt or potassium chloride or MSG in them at all. But the problem is sodium can lead, and this includes like baking soda and baking powder and other sodiums in the ingredients list. It can contribute to hypertension if your body is sensitive to sodium, and mine is. Also, in addition to that hypertension problem, salt can cause a variety of problems, including damaging the internal lining of your blood vessels, which can lead, to example, to plaque buildup and hardening of the arteries and stuff like that. And so it's very important to keep it low, and better off if you can like spread the salt throughout the day so that you're not peaking at any particular times when you're putting your more stress on your blood vessels. So you can try any and all of those. Sometimes I just do my fiber prior to consuming something with lots of sugar in it, because at least that gives me a buffer. It's not perfect. I find definitely if I have the fiber and the protein and fat, and then do the carbs at the end, it works really, really well. But it's only going to stay in your body for a certain period of time, and then you're going to have more. So if you're snacking all the time, you're going to need to be replenishing the load of fiber and protein and fat in there to combat blood spikes and blood sugar spikes and crashes. So I hope that helps. I will put a link down below to Jessie Inchauspe's YouTube channel, which she's called the Glucose Goddess. And you can go ahead, and I'll also put a link to one of her specific ones that's a lot about the right way to eat. so that you can minimize these problems. So thanks for your watching me. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I hope you have a wonderful and healthy day.